Thanks for joining us. I'm Ezra Levant from Calgary today. The recent spate of terror attacks in Canada are taking many by surprise. Just today, Corporal Brandon Stevenson, the man standing on guard next to Corporal Nathan Cirillo at the War Memorial, issued a statement saying, "In the coming days, I'll be resuming my duties at the National War Memorial. It will not be an easy task, but I am resolved to do it in honor of Nathan, Warrant Officer Patrice Vincent, and all those who stood and continue to stand on guard for Canada. I still believe Canada is a nation of peace where soldiers within its borders need not take up arms." That's a noble sentiment, but is it true? Or do our gun control laws actually tilt the domestic battlefield in favor of terrorist shooters, like the one who stormed Parliament 2 weeks ago? Professor John Lott is the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center and the author of More Guns, Less Crime. He joins us with more today from Philadelphia. Professor, welcome to the program. It's doubtful that even if Corporal Cirillo had bullets in his ceremonial gun that day, that he could have protected himself. It was just it was a sneak attack, really. But from the moment that first murder happened to when the terrorists went into Parliament Hill, had other Canadians been allowed to have a concealed carry firearm, or frankly even his fellow guard had bullets, perhaps he would have been stopped before he got to Parliament Hill.
Right. Well, I mean, the task that he faced is very difficult. It's very hard for somebody in uniform who's serving as a guard to be on their toes at all times. The terrorists have huge strategic advantages. They determine the time and the place where the attack is going to occur. And, to be on your toes, day after day, hour after hour is just simply impossible. And in this case, the killer snuck up behind him. But you can look at Israel. Israel's kind of had to go through this a lot for decades, and they learned a very simple rule, and that is, no matter how much money they spent in terms of putting police or troops on the street, terrorists, if they were patient, would always find an opening. So let's say you have a bus where you have one terrorist and a couple police officers. Terrorist has at least two strategic options. Either one, he can wait until the police leave before he engages in an attack, or he can kill the police first and then kill the other people there. What Israel learned eventually was that the only way to really stop those types of attacks is to allow civilians, people who aren't in uniform, to be able to go and carry guns with them, because the terrorist then doesn't know who he has to shoot first. He doesn't know whether the person in front of him or behind or on the side in the bus is going to be able to go and stop him. And that takes away important strategic advantages that the terrorists have.
And that's why in Israel you don't have a lot of shooting sprees. The shooting spree starts, but then, one, two, or half a dozen Israelis take out their sidearm and take care of the situation. Let me show you a graphic we prepared of all the shooting spree killers in the United States. I acknowledge that if someone's going to be a suicide bomber, having a concealed firearm somewhere in the vicinity would not be of much help. But look at all these shooting spree killings. They only ended when the second gun arrives, whether that's finally a police officer arriving on the scene or someone who goes down to their car and gets it out of the glove compartment or gets it out of their... In fact, in our Parliament itself, Professor, it was when our Sergeant-at-Arms went back to his office and got his gun out of his desk. So with a shooting spree, the answer is it ends when the second gun comes. And we have disarmed everyone in Canada other than the police, which I think tilts the playing field against us. What do you think? What do you say to people who would say, well, if everyone was packing heat, you'd have a lot more shooting sprees through hotheads or accidents or things like that? What do you say to the critics who say you really want more guns out there?
Right. You've brought up several points, but look, the simplest thing to look at is to look at the targets that these killers pick. And in the United States, since at least 1950, with just 2 exceptions, every single one of the mass public shootings have taken place where guns are banned. This isn't by accident. If this was just random, then a lot of the states that have concealed carry, 98, 99% of the attacks would take place where guns are allowed, not in those few places where they're banned. And, even in Canada, the Moncton killer that you had this past summer, if people had gone to his Facebook page, they would have seen he had comics up there which illustrated gun-free zones. He had one comic there where a victim had his hands up, was trying to run away from this killer, and was saying, look, you can't have a gun here. Guns are banned. And the killer's basically thinking to himself in a bubble that this guy's an idiot before he shoots him. But you look at the Santa Barbara killer this summer who put out a manifesto. He also noted there why he picked the places that he did to go and attack. And other places that he considered, he ruled out because people with guns would stop him before he was going to be able to go and kill many people.
Professor, that's incredible.
But, as far as your last point...
I'm afraid we're out of time, Professor, but I want to commend you and thank you. You are the first person in Canada who has pointed out that the Moncton killer had assessed things, analyzed things in terms of gun-free zones. The fact that we rely on a professor from Philadelphia to tell us that says our debate in this country is not as healthy as it ought to be about self-defense and concealed carry. Professor, I look forward to continuing this conversation with you another day soon.